If you've never smelled paper as it turns to sugar-black lace, it smells a little like a lie trying to make itself pretty. I know because I watched my future curl into ash between my sister's fingers. The match flared, she touched it to the corner of the envelope, and for a second it looked like a birthday candle. She even smiled. Then she dropped the burning corner into the sink and turned on the tap. Steam rose, smoke stung my eyes, and the university crest washed down the drain. She glanced at me over her shoulder and said, "You're being dramatic, Maya. That could have been any letter." And the faucet hissed like a snake swallowing what we both knew I'd spent my whole childhood chasing. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just stood there in the doorway of our cramped kitchen with the dented kettle and the peeling sunflowers on the wallpaper and listened to the water. There are moments in life when you're suddenly aware of every tiny sound. The fridge hummed like it was thinking. A pigeon knocked somewhere in the gutter. My own pulse tapped in my ears like a nervous code. That's how you know something irreversible just happened. Your body records it because you might need to testify later. If you're hearing this, then I guess this is my testimony. I grew up in a house that kept its secrets in the air vents. You could hear conversations through them if you pressed your ear just right. We didn't have much. My mother worked double shifts at the care home. My father left when I was 9 and sent holiday money that smelled like someone else's perfume. And my sister, Lena, learned how to stretch groceries as if bread had 9 lives. Lena is 8 years older than me, which meant that by the time I realized I had a voice, she already knew how to use hers. She learned to sign school permission slips in Mum's hurried handwriting, learned to talk down angry bill collectors, learned to pour tea and make heavy things sound light. When I was little, I thought she was a magician. When I was 16, I realized some magic is just control wearing lipstick. I was the quiet one with a head made of books. I used to study in the hallway because our bedroom was small, and Lena liked the TV loud, like she was trying to drown out thoughts. I used to fantasize about silence the way other kids fantasized about cars. Silence, and a card key to a dorm room door with my name printed on it, and a campus map with bright red dots that meant possibility. I tracked deadlines like they were planets moving into alignment. I saved every document in 3 places and turned my phone alerts into a symphony. Bing for scholarship, chime for essay feedback, bell for exam results. On the night the email came, it was 12:03 a.m. and I was lying under the duvet with my phone brightness turned down, and the word congratulations arrived like a sunrise under the covers. I remember touching the screen as if I could get closer to it. I remember pressing my lips to it silently so I wouldn't wake Lena. I didn't tell her that night. I wanted to wait for the official letter because Mum believes in paper. Paper is proof, she says. Paper is a door you can hold. So when I saw the courier envelope on the hall table 2 days later, my hands started shaking so hard I had to sit on the stairs. I took a breath. I told myself to be gracious, grown, small no more. Then I called out, "Lena, Mum, can you come here?" Lena appeared from the kitchen with a dish towel, Mum from the bedroom tucking her blouse into a skirt. I held up the envelope like a priest with a wafer. "Open it then," Lena said, like she was bored already. I don't know how she got it from me. I replay that part a lot. Did she step closer? Did I glance at Mum? Did the towel catch the corner, or did my fingers betray me? All I know is suddenly the weight of it was gone, and the next moment we were in the kitchen and Lena was saying, "I'll make tea. We'll do this properly." And the kettle was on, and steam was clouding the window, and my heart was doing its tap code thing again. There are so many versions of the next moments in my head, but the version that lives here is the one where she lights the match, touches it to the paper, and looks at me like I've chosen leaving over loving, and she can fix it if she acts fast. The version where she tells herself that keeping me home is love in action. Mum had gone back to check on a neighbor she sometimes helps. She missed it by minutes. By the time she came back, there were just ashes in the sink and a tea bag bleeding into a mug. I said, hoarse, "She burned it." And Mum looked from me to Lena, from the sink to my shaking hands. "Maya," Lena said softly, as if speaking to a child mid-tantrum, "you've been so stressed with exams. Are you sure you're not imagining things? We haven't seen a letter." "Smell it," I said, and I hated my voice for wobbling. It smelled like a promise dying. Mum pursed her lips, that pursed lips expression she uses when she's stuck between her daughters and rent is due. "Let's not dramatize, love," she said. which is a thing she says when she feels herself slipping. "We'll sort it. Show me the email later." When I went to show her, the email wasn't there. You know when you type something you're sure you've typed before and the search bar feeds you back silence? My inbox, meticulous, color-coded, backed up, had a neat gap where the most important message of my life should have been. I clicked refresh until my finger ached. I checked trash, spam, archive, other folders where I file things according to the private system that kept me safe. Apply. Wait. Pray. Nothing. I told myself I was tired. I told myself that sleep would put the word congratulations back on the screen. That night when I got up at 3 a.m. with my stomach cramping in stress knots, I tried to log into the university portal. My password didn't work. I tried again. Locked out. A box popped up with that gentle corporate tone. "You have exceeded the number of attempts. Please try again later." In the morning, Lena kissed my head like I was 5. "You know," she said while buttering toast, "there are plenty of good colleges near home. Closer to Mum, you don't have to run away to be successful." I said, "You burned it," and my voice came out flat, like a road stretched to the horizon. "Just say it." She held my gaze. She leaned close, so close I could see the golden flecks in her eyes. "There was no letter," she whispered. "You're telling yourself a story because stories are easier than the truth. The truth is you're scared to leave. I'm saving you from yourself." I went very still. It's something I do sometimes, like a deer that thinks if it becomes a statue the hunters will forget to shoot. And inside that stillness, something sharp clicked into focus. I would not beg her to tell the truth. I would not yell. I would build a bridge out of facts and walk across it. The first fact came from my memory of the envelope. The university crest was embossed in blue with a little nick missing from the top left shield. I'd noticed it because I noticed tiny things. Tiny things have saved us before. After school, when I knew Lena would be at her shift and Mum would be on the late rotation, I took a plastic grocery bag and emptied the kitchen bin into it, quiet as a thief. Coffee grounds, carrot peel, the wrapper from the custard creams Lena buys when she's been paid, a wad of damp ash. My throat closed when I saw a corner of thick paper fused with gray sludge. I laid it on newspaper and teased it with tweezers until blue showed through, and there it was, half a crest, the nick exactly where it lived in my memory. I pressed the corner between the pages of my old chemistry workbook, ironically, heat and change, because I didn't have a safe. The second fact came from school. Ms. Kaur, my head of 6th form, is the kind of teacher every quiet kid dreams into being. She wears bright scarves and treats you like a person with a spine. I knocked on her office door and felt my eyes fill before I even sat down. She listened without interrupting, then handed me a tissue and said, "We don't do this alone." She dialed the admissions office and put it on speaker. A cheerful administrator named Thomas told us that my offer was active and congratulated me, kindly, as if he could hear the way I was sitting on the edge of myself. Then he paused. That's odd. We have a note here. Offer declined by applicant, duplicate email sent confirming." He read the time stamp. It was the morning after the envelope turned to lace. "I didn't decline," I said, to the phone, to Ms. Kaur, to the version of me that still believed in fixed lines between right and wrong. "I would never." "Don't panic," Thomas said in that careful tone institutions use like a hand on your shoulder. "We have records. We can reverse this if it's an error. I'll flag it and send you a secure link to reset your portal." When I checked my inbox later, the reset link was there. When I clicked it at home, it said, "This link has expired or already been used." I tried again from the library, the same. I learned a new fact. Fear has stamina. It can run circles around you while you stand still. That week felt like living underwater. At home, the silence between me and Lena was thick and bright like glass. Mum noticed, of course. "Please, girls," she said, running her hands over her scalp like she could smooth the trouble down. "We can't be at each other. We're all we've got." Lena would carry on making tea, talking about the weather, asking if I wanted the last of the yogurt, her voice light, her eyes watchful. If you've ever been gaslit, you know how the room starts tilting. You reach an arm out for the wall and find air. You start to say maybe a lot. Maybe I misread the email. Maybe I dreamed the crest. Maybe hope was a hallucination. Then, on Friday, my password worked. I don't know why. Maybe the IT gods. and she would shield me with her body from the wind. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." In the morning, the sun came up like it always does, indifferent to our little dramas. Mum cried into my hair and pressed a gift into my palm, a silver key on a chain. "Not to this house," she said, her voice watery. "To the idea of home. You can always come back, but not because you have to, because you want to." Lena stood with her arms crossed and her mouth set, but her eyes were shining. She carried my suitcase to the car. She put the kettle I'd bought on the back seat as if she were placing a newborn in a cradle. At the station, she hugged me hard and whispered something into my neck that I couldn't parse at the time. Later, I would think she said, "I'm sorry." Later, I would listen to the recording again and hear that actually she said, "Don't hate me." The train slid away from the platform, and the city unfurled, brick and glass and sky and noise, and then fields like green breathing. I pressed my forehead to the window and let myself sob silently because grief and joy are twins who share a bedroom. I was going to the life I had earned, and I was leaving the life that had held me even as it choked me. Both things were true. Both mattered. Campus was a different country. The first night, my room smelled like new paint and possibility. Through the wall, someone laughed. Down the corridor, someone cried on the phone in a language I didn't know. I stuck my acceptance confirmation to the inside of my wardrobe door like a charm. I texted Mum that I was safe and that the kettle worked. I didn't text Lena. Not that night. A week later, the past found me anyway. It came in the form of a polite email from the scholarship committee that had awarded me a local grant. "We look forward to your presence at our recipient ceremony this Saturday," it read. "Please bring your original acceptance letter." I stared at the words until the lines doubled. I had the portal. I had the confirmation. But I did not have a letter because the letter had turned to lace and disappeared down a drain. I called Ms. Kaur. She said, "We'll figure it out," which is what she always says and which sometimes is a spell. She suggested I bring the portal printout and the timeline of events. She spoke the phrase chain of custody of documents, and I realized with a strange detached awe that I had lived a crime scene. I took the train back Saturday morning. The ceremony was in the church hall where we used to do nativity plays. Paper bunting looped from beam to beam. The mayor was there, wearing a chain that looked like pirate treasure, prepared to shake hands and smile. Mum sat next to me in her good dress, her knee gently knocking mine like Morse code for "still here." Lena was in the back row. I hadn't asked her to come, but of course she did. She likes to be where things happen so she can narrate them later. They called my name. I stood up, felt my stomach swoop like a roller coaster hitting the first drop, and walked to the front. The man from the committee smiled and held out his hand. "Your letter?" he asked, automatic, a formality in his voice. "I don't have it," I said into the microphone, and the room shifted, curious. I swallowed. It was destroyed by someone I love who believed that keeping me home would keep our family whole. There was a collective intake of breath that sounded like a wave rolling back from the sand. I held up my portal printout. "I have everything else. I have an offer. I have a deposit paid. I have evidence. I have the line between love and fear drawn in permanent marker." My hands didn't shake. "If this means I can't have your money, I'll work nights and I'll still graduate. But I won't pretend that sabotage is care." The room was very quiet. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lena's face. White, then red, then something like a cliff giving way. Mum's hand found mine and squeezed so hard it hurt in a good way, in a "we are here" way. The committee man cleared his throat. "We appreciate your honesty," he said, and he meant it. He looked at the other committee members, who nodded. "In fact, I think the moral courage you've shown today is exactly what this scholarship is supposed to reward. You don't need the original letter. You are the proof." The room exhaled. Someone clapped. Then everyone did. The sound washed over me, and I felt, for the first time in months, clean. Afterwards, in the car park, Lena approached me. Cars were pulling out, engines coughing, people doing that awkward shuffle of putting public faces back on. She stood a foot from me and looked like she was about to jump into a river in winter. "You didn't have to say it like that," she said. There was no fight in it, just a weary ache. "In front of everyone." "I had to say it somewhere," I replied, and because I am not a saint, because I am still human in a human story, I added, "You like crowds. I thought you appreciate the audience." She flinched and nodded like a punchline landed. Then she took a breath. "I'm sorry," she said, finally, the words stumbling out like they hadn't learned to walk. Not because you made me, because I did something ugly and called it love. I don't know how to be anything else. I've been the wall for so long. I believed her because telling the truth costs, and I could see the bill in her eyes. You can be a window, I said, surprising myself. Walls keep things out, windows let light in. She laughed then, a watery, incredulous sound that remembered how to be a laugh halfway through. You and your metaphors. Me and my college education, I said, and for the first time, it was a joke that didn't cut either of us. We weren't fixed. Forgiveness isn't a switch, it's a skill you practice with shaking hands, but something shifted. She took my hand, squeezed, and let go. Go be loud, she said softly. I'll figure out how to be quiet without disappearing. That night, back on campus, I lay in bed and thought about the ceremony, about paper bunting and pirate chains, and how truth sounds in a microphone. I thought about Mum's hand on mine, about Lena's apology, about the girl down the corridor crying in a language I didn't know, about how we all carry our families into new rooms, and sometimes they stand in the doorway, and sometimes they follow us in, and sometimes they sit in the car and smoke and wait. I thought about karma, about how it isn't a bolt of lightning. Sometimes it's a room full of people who hear you and nod, and an older sister who realizes the fire she lit burned her too. Sometimes karma is simply this, the future happening anyway. If you're still listening, here's the part I want you to keep, the moral that isn't neat but is necessary. Love that demands you be smaller is not love, it's fear wearing your favorite jumper. The cure isn't punishment, it's boundary. The justice isn't revenge, it's walking through the door you earned even if someone tries to weld it shut. You can forgive someone for trying to keep you and still go. You can mourn the life that could have been if they had celebrated you and still build the one you deserve. On my wardrobe door, the acceptance confirmation has curled at the corner like it's trying to become a wing. Every time I leave my room, I tap it with my fingertip like a promise I made to 15-year-old me, studying by the hallway light while the TV yelled next door. And every time the kettle boils in my little dorm kitchen, it sounds a bit like that day in our kitchen when steam rose and smoke burned my eyes. The difference is, now the steam smells like cheap coffee and freedom. And when I pour, the mug fills. And when I drink, it's my life and nobody's got their hand on the faucet. The night it started, my kettle clicked off and the room went quiet in that way that makes you notice you're breathing. I was sitting on the thin carpet with my back against the bed, tracing the curl on the corner of my acceptance confirmation with my thumb like it was a worry stone. Outside my window, somebody on the quad was practicing a trumpet, missing the same note over and over with stubbornness that sounded like hope. My phone buzzed face down on the floor. For a second, I let it buzz. Then I turned it over, a message from Lena. Mum, coughing again, don't forget to check in tomorrow. Also sent your CV to my friend's office near home. They can get you a weekend job if you come back more. I stared at the word more like it had teeth. I typed, I'll call Mum in the morning. Thank you for thinking of me because I am always polite to the people who can break me. I left the part about coming back unsaid. Silence can be a boundary if you let it. Classes had the clean, sharp smell of new beginnings and dry erase marker. In the first week, I sat in the front row because that's where the oxygen is if you're trying not to drown. Our seminar leader, Professor Whittaker, had the kind of voice that makes words sound heavier than they are. He asked us to introduce ourselves with one truth and one aspiration, which felt like a small dare. When it was my turn, I said, Truth, I can tell when a kettle, about to boil by the sound it makes. Aspiration, I want to write something that changes someone's mind. He smiled in that way that isn't quite a smile. Lofty, he said. We'll see. After class, a girl with a red notebook and a scarf like a flag fell into step beside me. I'm Amelia, she said, as if we'd already met in another life and it hadn't gone well, but this time it would. You take notes like you're translating a poem. Want to swap? I run a little study group, just 3 or 4 of us keeps me honest. I noticed her nails, short, clean, painted the color of rain. I noticed the way she tilted her head when she listened, like she was handing you her attention and expected you to give it back uncreased. I said yes because saying yes has opened more doors for me than it's closed, and because see. After a while he said, I heard about the essay thing. People talk, sorry. It's fine, I said, and then, because he was looking at me like I could hand him any version of the truth and he'd hold it, It's not fine, but it's over. He nodded slowly. I do a tiny podcast for the campus station, he said, like a confession. Conversations in the cracks, we call it. People tell stories they don't know how to tell in daylight, anonymous if they want. You'd be good. I laughed, startled. I'm trying to keep my life out of microphones at the moment. Fair, he said, and hopped off the machine to catch my sock before it hit the floor. He handed it to me like a white flag. If you ever change your mind. We started walking to the library together at odd hours, the way new cities create routes out of people instead of streets. He had a way of asking one more question that pulled the splinter without making you bleed. When he talked about home, there was a square of darkness he didn't step into. I didn't step into mine either. We let those rooms exist closed. In late October, the thing with Amelia found its next form. The department posted the shortlist for the freshman essay prize on a notice board with a thumbtack that pierced hope and paper alike. There it was. A. Ellison, warmth. I stood under the strip light and felt the feeling you get when you walk into a room and know you're being talked about in the sentence that ends as you enter. I went to the reading because I am a person who faces things even when they bite. The auditorium smelled like possibility and dust. Amelia took the stage and addressed The Color of Forgiveness. She read the opening line and it was mine, except not. It was a mirror tilted slightly to make you taller or shorter depending on the angle. She had written the whole essay in a voice like mine wearing her jewelry. She told a story about a cousin burning a letter for warmth that belonged to someone else. She didn't say kitchen sink. She didn't say Lena. She said, sometimes love scorches you by accident. The audience made that admiring low sound people make when they recognize themselves and are grateful someone said it out loud. I sat there and felt the old kitchen fill my lungs. This time there was no smoke, just the idea of it. Afterwards, in the milling throng of congratulations and plastic cups, she found me. Inspired by your bravery, she said brightly. You showed me how to dig. This is me digging. I looked at her and saw, finally, the architecture. She didn't want my story. She wanted my voice, the way some people want your coat because they've decided they looked better in it before they tried it on. You can't take my face and pretend it's a mask, I said softly. That's not homage. That's theft with a scarf on. She blinked like a camera in bad lighting. It's just themes, Maya. You don't own pain. No, I said, and the word felt like a key sliding home. I own this pain. You can write your own. It didn't end there because things don't. I sent an email to the prize committee with an attachment. My draft, my timestamps, the email about the plagiarism flag, the IT report, the note on my lamp. I wrote calmly. I did not accuse in adjectives, only in evidence. I ended with, I'm not asking you to punish anyone. I'm asking you to stop rewarding this. They responded with bureaucratic speed and kindness. We will review immediately, they said. A week later, the prize was postponed pending investigation. Campus murmured. Amelia posted a vague statement on her feed about being silenced by gatekeepers who are afraid of women who speak frankly. People rallied around her because charisma is a light you mistake for heat if you're cold. Meanwhile, Raffi asked if I wanted to grab tea as friends, with the kind of emphasis that only pretends to be casual. We sat by the window while rain stitched the sky to the ground. He told me about the podcast in more detail, how he runs it out of a borrowed studio and edits between classes. People tell me things they've never told anyone, he said, eyes on the steam. Sometimes I go home and I feel like I'm full of other people's rooms. That sounds heavy, I said. It is, he said, but sometimes a room gets lighter just because we turn the light on. He looked up. I've been doing this thing since before I met you. I want to keep doing it, but I also like you. I don't want you to think I'm collecting you. I don't, I said, surprising myself with the surety. I like you too. We kissed in the doorway because it felt like a place neither of us owned. It was careful. It didn't taste like escape. For a while, my life felt like a film with good lighting. Then one morning, my phone vibrated with a link from a number I didn't recognize. Loved this week's episode, the text read, with a heart I didn't invite. The podcast title, Fire in the Sink. My stomach went cold. I pressed play because not knowing is a worse kind of pain. It was me, not my voice but my story, filtered through a soft-spoken narrator who said things like a loved one and a letter, and a kitchen that smelled like steam and loss. The line "hug with a chokehold" was there, dressed in different words like a fugitive who thinks a hat will hide them. Halfway through, the narrator said, "She kept a recording for proof," and I felt the room shrink. I told only 2 people about the recording, Ms. Kaur and Raffi. Ms. Kaur would rather burn her reputation than mine. The studio credits at the end included story development. You can argue letters stand for anything until they don't. I sat very still and watched the shape of my trust cast a new shadow. Then I texted Raffi, "Did you use my story?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared. Then, "I anonymized everything. It's not you, it's a composite. I asked you if you'd come on and you said no, but I thought it could help people." "You don't help people by taking their choice," I wrote. He called. I let it ring until the sound seemed to carve grooves in the air. He left a voicemail. "I'm sorry, I messed up. Can we talk?" I listened to it twice like an idiot checking if the ending changes. It didn't. I went for a walk because the room had too many walls. The campus lawn was swept clean by wind. A flock of birds revised the sky like they were editing a draft together. I stood in the middle of all that motion and felt how stillness can be its own form of strength. Then I did what I've taught myself to do. I built a bridge of facts and walked across it. I took screenshots of the podcast episode, the credits, the message, the link. I wrote to the station manager. "I did not consent to the use of my story. I can demonstrate that the composite is identifiable to people who know me. This violates your ethics policy." I Raffi so he could see the shape of a boundary drawn in daylight. He replied within minutes, "You're right, I panicked. I wanted a good episode and I convinced myself I was doing a righteous thing. I'll pull it. I'll apologize formally." The station manager wrote, "Episode suspended pending review. We take consent seriously." The episode came down within the hour, but the ache didn't. That's the thing about Betrayal. You can delete the file, but the silence it leaves hums for a while. That evening, Lena called twice. I didn't pick up. She texted, "Answer your phone, it's urgent." Urgent is a word that has worn grooves in my family since before I knew how to spell it. I called back. Her voice was a controlled sort of high, like a kettle whistling just under loud. "Mum's fine," she said before I could ask, and my breath came back from wherever it had been hiding. "It's not that, it's me. I did something stupid." I sat down on my floor. "What, Lena?" "I applied for a credit card in your name," she blurted, the words tumbling over each other like they'd been fighting to get out. "I was going to cancel it after the cashback. I thought I'd pay it off before you noticed. Then I missed the date. Then the interest is mad. I'm sorting it. Don't panic, I'll fix it." There are moments when you stop being someone's little anything. My voice came out strange to my own ears, clean and not generous. "You committed fraud," I said, nomming it because if I didn't it would dress up as care and ask to sleep over. "You can't sort that. You can only confess and repair." "Maya, don't do this," she snapped, fear snapping its teeth through Love's mouth. "Don't be righteous, I did it for us." "No," I said, and the word had weight now, a paperweight on a letter trying to fly away. "You did it because you're used to my future being a cupboard you can store your emergencies in." I took a breath because oxygen is a kindness you can give yourself. "Here is what is going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you will call the bank and tell them it was unauthorized. You will give them a written statement. You will send me the reference number. You will not touch anything else with my name on it ever again. And Lena, if you don't do this, I will, and it will be worse for you if I do." Silence stretched like a rope between us. I could hear her breathing. I could hear my own resolve learning to walk. Then she said, very small, very old, "Are you going to leave me?" "I already left," I said softly. "And I'm still here. That's the truth you have to live with. Both are true." We hung up without goodbye because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is end a conversation before it ends you. I went to the kitchen and boiled the kettle. The whistle sounded like a signal flare. I drank the tea standing up because sitting felt like surrender. The next day, an email from the station manager landed. "We're instituting a consent policy training. We apologize to you by name if you permit, or privately if you prefer." Raffi sent a message that didn't try to make me feel sorry for him. "I'm ashamed," it read. "If you." "Everything's about me," she snapped. "I had to pick up the pieces when he left. I had to." No, I interrupted, cutting through her voice like glass breaking. You chose to carry the pieces and throw some at me. That was you, not him. Silence, then quietly, what if I don't know how to be anything else? Then learn, I said, or you'll lose me too. The line went dead. My kettle clicked off. The room filled with the smell of steam and endings, and I realized betrayal doesn't stop when the fire burns out. It lingers in the smoke, in the walls, in the people you love most. But so does resilience. And that's what I held on to as I sipped my tea in the dark, that sometimes karma isn't lightning striking. Sometimes it's the simple act of refusing to let the past write the next chapter. The week it all broke open started ordinary, which is how most avalanches begin, snow pretending to be still. I woke before my alarm because dreams had teeth and wouldn't let go. The kettle clicked, my breath fogged the window, and campus yawned itself awake outside, a scaffolding of new days holding up old habits. I pressed the acceptance confirmation on my wardrobe door with my fingertip like I was checking a pulse. Next to it, the little sticky note with the bank reference number lifted at one corner as if trying to leave. Paper proof. I kept repeating that to myself because so much of this year felt like trying to hold water in a fist. Whitaker had us do peer critiques that morning. He called on Theo, his favorite, the boy whose voice carried through rooms like a sermon, and asked him to model the level of rigor we're seeking. Theo read an essay about a childhood dog and found a way to make it a manifesto on freedom. When the clapping finished, Whitaker smiled the way I imagine he smiles in photographs. See, he said, emotion handled with restraint. He glanced at me on the word emotion like it was a wine that had gone vinegary. My stomach pinched. And Miss Maya, he added like an afterthought, your draft is earnest. Tighten, cut the diary out of it. I nodded because nodding is cheaper than arguing. But on the way out, Priya leaned in and murmured, he likes mirrors that flatter him. You're holding up a window. I kept walking so my face wouldn't show the gratitude I couldn't afford to spend in public. Raffi waited by the bike racks with 2 teas and a cardboard cradle. He does that, arrives in the middle distance of my day like something steady I didn't know I could have. I found a thrift shop near the station, he said, smiling with his eyes. Thought you might want a proper mug and not the plastic thing that tastes like old rain. He handed me one with a tiny chip on the rim. It looked like it had survived other mouths without breaking. We sat on the steps and let the heat through the cardboard thaw our hands. He didn't push at the bruise of what had been between us. He just sat there, present. Sometimes presence is the apology. Sometimes it's the punishment. My phone buzzed with an email and I felt that old spark of dread in my ribs like a failing light flickering. Subject: maintenance loan bank details updated. I stared. I hadn't updated anything. The email said, bright and cheerful as a cartoon, we've successfully changed the account for your next payment. The sort code and account number weren't mine. The bottom of the email said, if you didn't make this change, call immediately. I called immediately. The hold music was determinedly cheerful. The man who finally answered sounded like he was reading kindness off a script. Yes, Miss Maya, we received a call this morning verifying the change. Security answers matched. How? I asked, and my voice did that quiet thing it does when I'm trying not to shatter. What security answers? Primary school mother's maiden name first pet, he recited. We're very careful. My stomach sank. Those answers don't live on my social media, but they live in my house. We need to reverse it, I said, a little too fast. Now. We can flag it and hold the payment while we investigate, he said, soothing. You'll need to file a fraud report. It could be a family member, in which case. It is, I said, and only then realized I had spoken the truth out loud. Saying it made something both easier and worse. He took the details, gave me a case number that looked like a license plate. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so hard I had to put the tea down. Raffi didn't ask. He just sat there while I counted my breath backwards from 10, because when the world goes sideways, numbers are handrails. Then a second email arrived, as if the first had called a friend. Subject: Scholarship Office, withdrawal request received. The body read, we're sorry to hear you're taking a leave this term. We've processed the suspension of your award until your return. I felt the ground tilt. 10 minutes earlier, I had a roof. Now the wind was coming in through the walls. I called them too. I didn't withdraw, I said to the woman on the line, each word its own plank in a bridge. Who requested it? It came from your university email, she said. Attached, a letter explaining family obligations and mental health strain, signed with your name. I saw the signature in my head, my M too round, my Y sometimes uncertain, and tasted iron in my mouth. I need to see the letter, I said. I need to see the email headers. Of course, she said, kind, professional, probably imagining me as a file with a face. Forwarding now. It landed in my inbox like a dare. The letter used words I use. The cadence could have been mine on a tired day, but the signature was slightly wrong and the date format wasn't how I write dates. And the email headers told their own small truth. It didn't come from campus. It came from a personal account with my first and last name and the year I was born, the kind Lena uses for me when she thinks she's helping. The subject line had a capital letter exactly where Lena likes to put them. I called Lena. She answered breathless, as if running from the things she'd built. I've got Mum on the other line, can I call? Did you change my bank details? I asked, calm enough to scare her. Silence, then the sigh I know like the sound my kettle makes when it's about to sing. Maya, heating, gone up and Mum. She's coughing again and the car, I was going to put it back. I swear, I wasn't stealing. It's all one pot, isn't it, us? No, I said quietly. It's not one pot, it's my pot. You don't get to empty it and call it love. I'm sorting it, she said quickly, speed doing a good impression of competence. I called them, I used your answers because it's us, it's fine. I sent an email to your scholarship, just for this term so you don't implode trying to be a hero. You can come home, reset. You forged my name, I said. Again. The word again sat between us like something alive. You don't get to pause my life because yours is loud. Her voice went brittle. You're ungrateful, everything I've done. Everything you've done to me, I corrected, sharp enough to slice the old cord. Listen to me, Lena, because I'm not going to repeat this. You will call student finance and tell them to reverse the change. You will email the scholarship office from your own account and tell them you lied. You will send those messages to me. If you don't, I will file a police report. She laughed. It sounded like a plate cracking. You wouldn't. I already have a case number for the bank, I said. Don't make me add a crime reference to it. Her breath snagged. When she spoke again, she had put on her softer voice, the one she uses on mums at the care home and men on the phone who call her sweetheart. Mouse, she said, and the name landed like a hand on my hair from long ago. Don't do this. You know I'm only trying to keep us together. I closed my eyes. You don't hold a family together by breaking one person until they fit in the cracks. I hung up. My hands were shaking less. It's a strange thing, the steadiness that comes after the sentence you've dreaded saying finally leaves your mouth. You don't float. You don't fall. You stand exactly where you are and discover you can. I forwarded the forged letter to the scholarship office with the headers and a short, factual note. I copied the bank case number. I Whittaker because I had learned something about preempting the version of me that might reach his desk in rumor form. Then I walked to the campus admin office because email has a way of vanishing in a crisis like a friend who doesn't like hospitals. The woman behind the glass window read my printouts with the care of someone who has seen versions of this before. We can flag your account, she said. Any change requires in-person ID from you for the next 6 months. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Thank you, I said, and meant it. It is a particular relief to be believed without a performance. On the way out, I saw Amelia by the student union poster wall, pinning a flyer for a reading she was hosting. Owning Your Story, a night of brave voices. The audacity made me laugh, which was better than the other thing I wanted to do. She saw me and tilted her head. You coming? She asked. I'm having folks share how they overcame obstacles. Like plagiarism, I asked pleasantly. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes did that flinch I've started to recognize under good lighting. Like growth, she said, and turned back to her posters as if she could staple the conversation to the wall. That evening, the department hosted its authorship and consent forum, and Whittaker, because irony has a sense of humor, asked me to sit on the panel. I didn't want to, but I also didn't want the room to be all mirrors and no windows. I wore the chipped mug's steadiness like armor and stood backstage with my notes. My phone buzzed. A message from Mum. "Lena says you're threatening police." Where is she going? My voice did not quake, which felt like a small mercy. "To your father," Mum said, and the word father felt like a splinter even now. "She got his address from Auntie. She says if you're going to make her a criminal, she's going to confess to the first one who taught her how to break a family." For a second, I saw the road between our childhood and this morning laid out like a map, a red line snaking from the sink to the stage to a police form to a door I hadn't opened yet. "Okay," I said. "Okay." "She wants you to come," Mum said, voice wobbling. She said, "If Maya's going to press charges on me, she can at least say it to my face with him watching." The image of the three of us in the same air, me, the man who left, the woman who stayed and lit fires because she thought they were candles, made my mouth taste like pennies. "When?" I asked. "Now," Mum said. "He's at the shop. She's already there. I can't go. I've got shift. I can't." "I'll go," I said, and I surprised myself. Not because I wanted to, but because the idea of not going felt like letting the story fold itself without me on the page. "Text me the address. I'll go." I hung up. Raffi was already turning toward me, reading my face more than the room. "Do you want me to?" "No," I said and tried to smile. "This is a scene I have to walk into alone, but—" I touched his elbow light. "Can you be here when I walk out?" He nodded. "I'll be here," he said, and it sounded like something that could hold. On the train, the city unspooled in tired brick and graffiti and the backs of houses where people hang their lives out to dry on lines. I watched my reflection in the window as if I could practice what my face should do. Angry would be easy. Broken would be honest. Steady would be rare. I practiced steady. The repair shop looked the same as in the picture, metal shutters half up, a bell on the door that buzzed like a fly, the smell of oil and old stories. He was behind the counter with a rag in his hand like he'd frozen in the middle of wiping something down. Lena was perched on a stool, hair pulled back too tight, a little suitcase at her feet like punctuation. "Mouse," he said, before catching himself, before remembering who gets to use which names anymore. I didn't sit. I stood where the counter forced us into straight lines and said, "You called welfare on me." Lena rolled her eyes. "I called because you were up there talking about pain like it's a trophy, and I thought maybe someone should ask if you're—" "You called because you lost control of the story," I said low. "You changed my bank, you forged my name, you tried to pull me out of school like I was a splinter. When that didn't work, you called strangers to come take the mic out of my hand." She flinched, then masked it with disdain, our family's favorite concealer. "You're so dramatic." "You're so dangerous," I returned, and the words landed like keys clicking. "To other people's lives, to mine." Our father, my father, cleared his throat like a man who'd been underwater and forgot how to breathe air. "Girls," he said, using a plural that no longer fit. "Don't do this here." "Where else?" I asked, not unkindly. "You taught us to have our fights where no one could see. Look how well that turned out." He looked down. His hands were oil-stained and shaking. "She came to me," he said you were going to make her a criminal." "She made herself one," I said. "I just stopped calling it love." I turned to Lena. "Here's the choice. You can walk with me to the station and we can tell the truth together, the fraud report, the scholarship, the welfare call, the post. Or you can stay here and I keep walking without you." She sucked air, blinked hard, looked at him, looked at the suitcase, looked anywhere but at the version of herself she was being asked to meet. "You would put me in a cell," she whispered, and for the first time I heard it, the scared child in her, the one who watched a door close and decided to become a lock. "I would put you in the truth," I said, "and that might feel like a cell because you don't know how to live there yet." Something in her broke then, not loudly, not with tears, more like the sound of a bone setting in the quiet after the snap. She nodded once, tiny. "Fine," she said, "but you tell Mum I didn't do it because I'm evil." "I'll tell her you did it because you're lost," I said, "and that's not the same." We stepped toward the door together, two people whose footsteps used to match without trying and now had to learn a new cadence. My father reached out, as if to touch my sleeve, then thought better and dropped his hand. "I'll come," he said, hoarse, "if you'll let me." I paused with my hand on the bell. "You can walk behind," I said. "Not because you're uninvited, because you're late." We pushed into the day. The sky had done that pale thing it does before rain makes a decision. We reached the corner. My phone buzzed once more. A new email, subject line heavy as a gavel. "Formal notice, academic misconduct hearing." For a second, the words wouldn't assemble into sense. Then they did. The body read, "A complaint has been filed alleging that your forum remarks constituted targeted harassment of a fellow student. Hearing scheduled Thursday." I stopped dead on the pavement. The traffic hummed. Lena was half a step ahead, then turned back. "What now?" she asked, not snide, just tired. I showed her. She read. She met my eyes, and for the first time in months, maybe years, her outrage was on my side. "She did this," she said flatly. "Amelia, she can't stand that you didn't break." "We'll go to the station," I said, calm falling over me like a coat. "Then we'll go to campus. Then I'll go stand in another room where people who don't know me will decide if the shape of my voice is allowed to exist." We started walking again. The crosswalk light blinked its green man. Our father's steps sounded behind us like a drum learning a new song. I realized I was breathing, really breathing, even with all of it happening at once. The money, the post, the welfare check, the hearing. Betrayal had come at me from every angle, and somehow I still had enough air to make a sentence. "If you're listening, this is where I leave you for now. At the curb, with the light counting down and the street between us and the place where we tell the next truth. My sister at my shoulder, not forgiven, not condemned, just walking. My father behind me, not redeemed, not erased, just present. And me, with a chipped mug waiting back on my desk and a door full of papers that don't flutter as much when I close it. Karma isn't the lightning strike people promise in movies. Sometimes it's an inbox that says, reversed, and a hearing that forces the right conversation into a fluorescent lit room. Sometimes it's a sister choosing, finally, to use her voice where it counts. Sometimes it's simply this. You press submit on the form, you open the door, you step off the curb, and you keep going even while the past shouts your old name across the road. The day of the hearing, the sky looked undecided, like it might rain or hold itself together out of politeness. I woke before my alarm and sat on the floor with my back to the bed, breathing slow because numbers calm me. 10 in, 10 out, 10 more for luck. The acceptance confirmation on my wardrobe door fluttered when I stood to dress. The sticky note with the case number beside it steady as a witness who has made peace with what she saw. I made tea because it's what I do when I don't know what else to do. The kettle clicked off. That sound has become my metronome, proof that something in the world starts, boils, ends, and cools the way it's meant to. I walked across campus with a folder tucked under my arm. Screenshots, email headers, the welfare officer's report, my statements, dates, times, the small neat horrors of this year printed in 12-point font. Priya met me outside the administration building in a navy coat and a face that meant business. She reached into her bag and produced a pack of tissues and a highlighter because she knows what emergencies really require. If they try to gaslight you with tone, she said, pushing her glasses up, say policy every third sentence. People who love power love policy even more. Raffi waited a few steps back, hands in his pockets, not touching my life but orbiting respectfully. I'll be here when you walk out, he said, and I believed him. He didn't try to follow me in. That's the difference between wanting to help and believing you have a right to be inside every moment. The hearing room was a windowless square with carpet that looked like it once dreamed of being moss. 3 people sat behind a table. The dean, a woman with a voice like a held note, the student conduct officer, neat, kind, armed with a fountain pen, and a student representative whose badge announced her as Tamsin and whose eyes suggested she was already on my side, but had learned how to hide it. Whitaker sat against the wall like a piece of furniture, present but not participating. He gave me the briefest nod, which I returned with the kind of neutral face I have learned to wear around men who think they invented objectivity. Amelia sat on the other side with her scarf looped just so, as if this were a panel talk she was about to moderate. Her expression was composed enough to win awards. The allegation read out by the officer was precise and bloodless, that my remarks at the forum constituted targeted harassment of a fellow student, that my allusions encouraged a hostile environment, that I had abused my influence. Influence. I almost laughed. Influence feels like a new coat someone puts on you while you sleep and expects you to apologize for stretching. The dean asked if I wished to make an opening statement. I stood, palms flat on the folder to stop my hands remembering how to shake. I'm here because I... Tidy, but okay. He nodded. Do you want to record something? He asked carefully. Not like before, for you, no air, a note to your future self. I'll set up the mic, hit record, leave the room, you can talk. I won't listen unless you say I can. The offer made my throat sting. Yes, I said, because one day I might forget how this felt, and I want to remember the exact weight. That night in the tiny campus studio, he adjusted the mic and left. The red light blinked on like a patient heartbeat. I sat with the headphones around my neck so I wouldn't feel like I had to perform for their cups. I said my name into the room. I said today's date. I said, you were believed in a room where you expected to be made smaller, and felt my own voice settle into the air. I said, your sister told the truth in front of strangers, and tasted the strange sweetness of that sentence. I said, your father called last night to ask if he could take Mum to her appointment next week. She said yes. He said he'll be on time, and let the complexity of all that sit without comment. I said, karma wasn't fireworks. It was a meeting invite and a policy draft and a man choosing to pick up a phone and say, I failed you, and a sister choosing to put down the match. Then I went quiet and let the room record that too, because silence can be proof when it isn't a weapon. When I finished, I didn't listen back. I named the file like I always do with the date, with a final in lowercase, and saved it in 3 places, 2 in the cloud, 1 on a cheap USB that lives in the chipped mug Raffi found me. I walked back to my dorm through a campus that seemed to know how to be gentle for a few hours. I stuck the hearing letter, the one that said dismissed, inside the wardrobe door next to the acceptance confirmation, the case number, the small geography of my year. The papers fluttered when I closed it, as if sighing. Not with fear, not with relief, just with the movement of air in a room that felt more mine. I called Mum. She told me the neighbor's dog had learned to open the biscuit tin, and that Mrs. Doyle was pretending not to know where the crumbs came from. She said my father had called and asked if he could pay for the leaky roof. She told him yes, and then told him that didn't fix the rooms that had already got wet. He said he knows, she said, and neither of us tried to decide whether we believed him because some truths don't need immediate verdicts to be true. Before bed, I texted Lena a picture of my door with the papers taped inside. Proof, I wrote, and added a silly sticker because sometimes you have to feed the child in a person to get the adult to keep going. She replied with a photo of her own, her wallet with my name removed from the emergency notes, the card she shouldn't have had cut clean in half. Working on window installation, she wrote. No new fires. I lay down and listened to the kettle click in the kitchen down the hall, someone else's life boiling and cooling on schedule. Through the wall, somebody laughed. Farther down, someone cried on the phone quietly, no words, just the shudder of someone being witnessed by a voice. I thought of the repair shop bell, the forum microphone, the buzz of my phone every time someone tried to write my narrative for me. I thought of stepping off curbs, of crossing streets, of the feel of a new key against my skin on a chain. I thought of the phrase I have been testing on my tongue all year. Love without consent is control. I thought of its sibling. Justice without humility is vengeance. And I thought about the thing that threads them together so they don't choke you, boundaries, spoken in a steady voice, repeated as many times as necessary. If you've been listening this whole time, here's what I want you to keep when the video ends and your room goes back to being just your room. Betrayal may hum in the walls long after the fire is out, but so does resilience. Keep receipts, not because you plan to go to war, but because memory is kinder when it has company. Lock your doors without locking your heart. Ask before you touch not only bodies but stories. When someone tries to make you small enough to carry, refuse to get in the bag. Let your no be a sentence with a period, not an apology dressed as a comma. Make policies when the apology isn't enough. Make tea when the speech is over. Put your proof where you can see it, not because you doubt yourself, but because you deserve to live in a room built on what's true. One last thing. I took the acceptance confirmation off the wardrobe door this morning and held it up to the light. The corner has curled into something that looks like a wing. I pressed it down again, smooth, and said out loud, to the paper, to the kettle, to the girl I was in the hallway, to the woman I'm becoming. I'm not leaving you behind to become someone else. I'm taking you with me. Then I turned off the light, and for the first time in a long time, the quiet in my room sounded like peace, not the pause between alarms. Sometimes betrayal comes from the people we trusted most, the ones who swore they were holding us together while they were quietly pulling us apart. And sometimes justice doesn't roar like thunder. It shows up quietly in the form of truth spoken, lies exposed, and policies written so others don't bleed where you bled. If there's anything I've learned, it's this. You are allowed to protect your future without apology. You are allowed to walk away from love that only knows how to burn. And you are allowed to tell your story in your own voice, without permission, without shame. Hold on to your proof. Hold on to your no. Hold on to yourself, because in the end, that's the one person who has to live every chapter with you. And when the fire dies down and the smoke clears, remember, resilience doesn't mean the flames never touched you. It means you refuse to let them decide how your story ends.